Well, we talked a little bit about it last week, the inflation data, and it was just released this morning. So we got to go back to our buddy Jill. CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger is joining us again this morning to talk about where prices stand. Good morning, Jill. How are you today?
Doing great.
Well, thanks for being here today. Let's talk about the August data and what it showed.
Well, we saw the inflation rate increasing by 2.5% from a year ago. Now, 2.5%, that's getting pretty close to where we were before COVID. It's down from 2.9%, a little bit better than we expected, mostly due to this big drop in gas prices. I don't know if you guys have filled up lately, but 10% drop in gas prices nationally from a year ago. It's not such great news at the core rate. That's the one that removes food and energy because it's so volatile in those categories. The core rate was up 3.2% from a year ago. That matches the previous month. The culprit of this core rate, I know we keep talking about it, but it's the shelter component. Shelter accounted for more than 70% of the increase in the core CPI, according to the government.
So inflation dropping a little bit, core rate the problem. Is that why prices are still so high in other areas except for at the pump? Because the pump prices have been good.
Yeah, it's so weird because, you know, there's a real confusion, and I understand why, between the inflation rate and prices. So what's inflation? It's an increase in the average level of prices of goods and services. Now, if you see prices go down, like the last time we saw prices drop was probably right at the beginning of COVID, that's called deflation. And I know you kind of want to go back to when prices were lower, but when we drop, it's usually because we're in a bad recession, and we have to also not just have lower prices, but we have job losses and lower wages. So here's the thought process for today. Instead of rooting for lower prices, let's kind of hope that over time, wages grow faster than inflation. That's the key to getting this high inflation era behind us.
We can all hope for that, that's for sure. You and I have talked about it. The Federal Reserve has been trying to bring inflation down by pushing those interest rates up. The Fed meets next week. So what do you think the board's going to do?
4.5 years after they made that COVID shutdown cut, the Fed is now going to cut for the first time in all those years. And it's probably going to be 1/4 percentage point, not a half. I think that it could be a half, but I do think that because that core rate remains 3.2% higher from a year ago, that's just the beginning process of lowering interest rates. That 1/4 percentage point will go down from the 23-year highs, but we'll get many rate cuts. Some months it might be a 1/2 percentage point, might be 1/4, and they might skip a meeting. So we'll just have to listen to the Fed and what they say. But for those of you who are looking to borrow money, the process of lower rates starts next week.
All right, Jill, thank you so much. We will talk to you again next week. Of course, you can catch Jill regularly on CBS Mornings and the CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell, as well as every week here on QC Morning. Thanks, Jill. We'll see you next time.